goody, new nightmare fuel for me! Hello, Internet, I'm Ren, and today I want to talk about my latest obsession, Blue Eye Samurai, a stunning tour de force of an animated series created by Amber Noizumi and Michael Green, released on November 3rd, 2023. I binged through all 8 episodes of this show in less than a day, and I have watched it through again and again since. With every subsequent rewatch, I notice new details and things to appreciate about it, and it's going to be a long time before Blue Eye Samurai stops living in my head rent-free while we wait for Season 2. This video will contain mild spoilers for Blue Eye Samurai, but I'll do my best to avoid giving too much away. Blue Eye Samurai is an epic revenge tale set in 1600s Edo period Japan, at a time when Japan's borders were closed to foreigners and white people weren't allowed to reside there. Blue Eye Samurai is a love letter to samurai movies, but also to action movies in general, making overt references to the likes of Kurosawa films, Japanese cult classics like Lady Snowblood, but also things like Clint Eastwood movies, and other more modern fare. They fuse a number of different influences to create something truly unique and special. One interesting thing I noticed about Blue Eye Samurai is that although the production was originally written and voiced in English, a lot of the time the rhythm of the speech and specific word choice in the dialogue almost feel reminiscent of anime that was originally written in Japanese and then translated for the English dub.
You dead-eyed half-blooded demon bastard! You look like an unreal!
There's something almost tongue-in-cheek about it at times.
You think you can fight us? An orphan?
I know what you are.
But it really works, even at the more sincere moments, to convey a sense of atmosphere.
To a man lost in the dark, an ember can light the way. Thank you for my ember.
There are other elements that speak to this blend of cultures as well, like a fantastic sequence with a Japanese language version of For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. Absolutely iconic. Mizu, the titular Blue Eye Samurai, is of mixed Japanese and white heritage and is considered less than human by many around her, often referred to as a demon or an onryu. She's on a quest to kill every white man that was in Japan when she was conceived, thereby avenging her mother and herself for what she views as the curse of her existence. Blue Eye Samurai is gorgeous and painstakingly crafted. Everything from the costuming to the animation, to the score. Are beautifully rendered, creating an immersive world for the characters to inhabit. Each episode is as long as a full-length TV episode, lasting between 45 minutes to over an hour, resulting in storytelling that feels cinematic in scope. It's a brutal and at times heartbreaking story with many twists and turns and some shocking revelations. Although parts of the story are predictable and straightforward, it feels very intentional and still manages to pull off a few surprises. It's been called a mix of Yentl and Kill Bill because Mizu disguises herself as a man to avoid the restrictions placed upon women in her society as she travels around on her violent quest for revenge. There's also an element of genderqueerness to Mizu that I love, which appears to have been intentional on the part of the creators. To have a character like that who lives in a time who wouldn't necessarily have a vocabulary to consider her gender, it's been really heartening and interesting hearing people see the show now thinking about what Mizu might identify as. Referring to Mizu as she or they, that's amazing. We made sure in the first episode when people were reading it that it was a misleading read. We said her gender was Mizu. Mizu, as played by Maya Erskine, is magnetic, and her charisma is part of what carries the show.
The painter's signature. Immaculate.
You put my bullet against your blade.
You don't deserve my blade. You don't even deserve this blade.
She's a deeply flawed character, but as we learn more about her, we can't help to empathize with her and even root for her as she hacks and slashes her way along in her quest, even when she causes a shocking amount of collateral damage. Her confidence and determination are electric, like she knows nothing can stand in her way, and that feels earned because her skill with a sword is practically otherworldly. The husky monotone with which Erskine delivers her lines is perfect.
How dare you? Be warned, you face my Shindoryu!
The problem with Shindoryu is it's trash.
I could listen to it all day. Mizu's appearance was also given a lot of consideration. There were many conversations about how Mizu would look, explains Noizumi. Various members of our team were also mixed race, and everybody was on board with trying to find this perfect version of her that read Asian, that read white, that read feminine, but also a little masculine. Mizu is single-minded in her quest for revenge, and makes it clear time and time again that she isn't a hero.
I never said I was a samurai. You did. I'm on the path of revenge. There's no place on it for love, or friendship, or weakness.
She lives her life with only one concern: vengeance.
I have no interest in being happy, only satisfied.
When we meet her, her entire life is essentially consumed by her rage and need for revenge. It is empty of anything else. And she almost seems to like it that way, as if she revels in her righteous anger. But despite her best efforts, Mizu does make some friends along the way, starting with Ringo, a disabled noodle maker with no hands whose kindness and irrepressible disposition prise open Mizu's stubborn heart. I know the Sunshine and Stormcloud duo is a well-worn trope, especially in action stories, but I'm always a sucker for it, and it's as sweet here as it is anywhere, especially with how hostile the world around Mizu is. It's not like she's the way she is for no reason. Ringo connects with her specifically because he recognizes her as being otherized for her unmistakably Western eyes, and that's something he understands intimately as a visibly disabled person. He even refers to her as being deformed, like her eyes are a disability.
Anything so I can learn to be just like you.
Like me?
You're deformed, but you're still strong.
Mizu tries again and again to push Ringo away.
If I see you again, I will kill you and never think of you again.
But he's relentless, and I love him for that, because Mizu is someone who needs a friend a lot more than she realizes. Ringo helps her out on numerous occasions.
Hey, where's your pass?
Right here. Travel pass for 2. Just as 2 boys traveling together like always.
And she learns not to underestimate him like everyone else does.
Useful.
Which is one thing I really love about Ringo's portrayal. A lot of the issues with his disability come from the assumptions other people make about his capabilities. He's actually quite adept at moving through the world when people let him adapt and do things his way. Sure, there are things he can't do, but there's a lot that he can do, and that's what he focuses on. He's often a voice of reason and, to extent, decency for Mizu. While he starts the story putting her on a pedestal, her obsession with revenge sometimes leads her to do things he doesn't agree with, and he tells her so.
Master, you just stood there.
She's better off.
You are no samurai. A samurai is honorable.
Another of Mizu's unlikely friendships comes in the form of Taigen, voiced by Darren Barnett, who also played Paxton Hall Yoshida on Never Have I Ever, a very different show. Although it'll never not be weird that they cast him as a romantic lead opposite an actual teenager when he was in his late 20s. What the hell, Netflix? Anyways, Taigen is reintroduced to us in the first episode as the adult version of a boy that bullied Mizu for her eyes in a childhood flashback in the small fishing village they grew up in. Now an arrogant young samurai, Taigen crosses paths with Mizu when she launches a slightly provoked attack on his dojo.
Oh, good. We get to kill you.
Listen, Mizu carries herself with real give me a reason energy, and a reason was given. Taigen comes to the dojo's defense, and she absolutely wrecks him, cutting off his hair and dishonoring him publicly. Taigen hunts Mizu down and demands a rematch to restore his status and honor.
It's a contract for a duel. The rematch you owe me, to be registered, legal, and witnessed. Only thing left is the date.
Leaving his fiancée Akemi, voiced by Brenda Song, behind in the process.
He must have left a trail.
But what if he kills you this time?
Through his efforts to ensure that Mizu survives to see their duel through,
Hey, I need you alive. We have a contract, remember? No one gets to kill you but me.
Taigen goes from being an unlikable jerk to an endearing and loyal friend to Mizu. A real Steve Harrington type.
Always the babysitter. Always the goddamn babysitter!
Barnett is great in the role, and the character is well written, providing some comic relief during tense scenes.
I'll help. No one gets to kill you, but...
And another voice of reason in Mizu's life to complement Ringo.
You've known all this time. The Shogun is in danger. Akemi is in danger. What kind of samurai are you?
There's also a hint of romantic chemistry between them that I hope is explored more in Season 2. Akemi, Taigen's fiancé, is also a highlight of the series.
What's a party without Renga?
The first time we meet Akemi, it's through the bars of a literal gilded cage, and from her perspective, Mizu is also seen through the bars of a cage. Because they're both trapped, even if Mizu isn't trapped in the same cage. Cages are used symbolically with Akemi on a couple occasions throughout the series to visually tell us how she's feeling, and I like that. She flees the gilded cage of her father's estate to track down Taigen after she's promised to another man when he loses his status. She tries to sneak out, much to the chagrin of her father figure and attendant Seki, played by George Takei, who is also wonderful with his singularly fantastic voice.
For example, when you seem set on what is clearly a bad decision, like running away, you think I don't know you, child? I brushed your teeth.
Seki and Akemi's relationship is really touching and injects some much-needed warmth into the series. Seki tries to give Akemi as much agency as he can while trying to help her learn hard lessons.
You're like an orchid, lovely and singular, but suited for neither frost nor fry, and stubborn as to when to bloom to reason.
And he doesn't stop her from running away. Their scenes together are some of my favorites in the series. Akemi is also a strong juxtaposition to Mizu in terms of how each of them deal with their gender and the societal constraints placed upon it. Mizu navigates the world by hiding both her gender and mixed-race identity whenever possible, wearing tinted glasses to obscure her eyes, and binding her chest and wearing a scarf to hide her breasts and lack of an Adam's apple. Also, side note, if binding is something you're interested in, please be sure to look up safe binding practices, link in the description. One detail I liked in Mizu's costuming is that it was designed to partially resemble a shelter. Since Mizu travels constantly and doesn't have a permanent home, the costume designer saw her costume as her house. There's also a cowboy western element to the series, especially in Mizu's saunter and behavior, and the costuming director was told, just imagine this is Clint Eastwood in every single shot. That's who Mizu needs to be. And so they curated this amazing silhouette. While Mizu disguises her femininity, Akemi embraces hers and uses it to any advantage she can to gain some control in her life. Visually, she's also a polar opposite to Mizu, perfectly capturing the beauty standards of the era and almost always wearing beautiful kimono and fashionable makeup. In some ways, Akemi's look was inspired as a sort of Japanese Marie Antoinette, with dramatic flair and fashion-forward looks with detailed visual motifs. Akemi is kind of similar to Ringo in that people constantly underestimate her, while she finds ways to move through the world with intention. We see Akemi develop from a naive girl into a calculating woman who knows what she wants and pursues it. Where Akemi and Mizu's stories intersect, we also meet Madame Kaji, a brothel owner played by Ming-Na Wen, named for the lead actress in Lady Snowblood, Maiko Kaji. Lady Snowblood is a clear influence on Blue Eye Samurai as another female revenge story featuring some similar themes. Through Madame Kaji, we get to know some of the women who work the brothels and get a window into their lives.
This is no fancy pleasure house with hours of dance and witty conversation. What the geisha hopes to avoid at the end of the night is how we start the day. I don't pretend it is work any woman likes, but if you can survive it, you will be safe in my care.
There are some heartbreaking elements to this storyline that absolutely made me cry, but also some funny and tender moments. And we see how the brothels gave women some agency in a society in which their mobility and employment is highly limited. This can actually be compared to how prostitution and brothels in the American West had a similar effect in providing women with their own source of income, and therefore influence, at a time when they often had little of either. Although the protection and influence their position and resources provide is very limited in the world of Blue Eye Samurai, resulting in an incredible extended fight scene to protect Madame Kaji's brothel. The way the series uses sexuality is also really interesting, and again presents contrasts between Akemi and Mizu. We see Akemi in several different scenes where her sexuality is at the forefront, up to and including actual sex. What all these scenes have in common is Akemi using her sexuality to advance her position and manipulate men into doing as she wishes.
Sweet nectar of your body. A gift she declines.
Using the limited way men perceive her as a strength to control them. With Mizu, we also get a sex scene. Hers is in a flashback, and it's infused with a surprising amount of tenderness in stark contrast to the Mizu we know up to that point. Seeing her vulnerable and happy and comparing that with the Mizu we've been watching underscores the pain and trauma that has led her back to the violent path of revenge. And I've got to stress, Blue Eye Samurai is one of the most violent things I've watched in a while. Oh, the teeth. Oh god, the teeth. Oh no, oh why. I thought Gennady Tartakovsky's Primal was outlandishly violent. Also a great show I've been meaning to talk about. But Blue Eye Samurai is on another level. There are multiple bloodbaths and massacres throughout the series, and a whole lot of people die in all sorts of visceral and brutal ways. Yes, there are scenes I physically cringe at or look away from because I am a weak little baby. But it's also hard to look away because it all looks so damn cool! Mizu is one of those fighters that feels unbelievable and almost supernatural in terms of her sheer competence. But it's a trope of the genre, and it's a treat to be along for the ride, because the combat sequences are so imaginative, detailed, and kinetic. They are a blast to watch. I studied martial arts for about 10 years, and the animation and fight choreography really is a cut above with marvelous physicality. Part of this can be credited to a lot of extra work behind the scenes.
Being a martial artist myself that I studied for many years, I wanted authentic martial arts movements. So bringing in the stunt choreographer in the beginning was important.
Like actually having the animators take a martial arts and swordplay lesson.
I also made them do a little martial arts class with me because I wanted them to feel what it felt like to throw a punch or wield a sword.
There's a lot of love and attention to detail in the construction of this series, and it really pays off. But it isn't just amazing to look at. There's also a consequential element to the violence, which also heightens the stakes. A lot of people get hurt. Often badly, Mizu included. And it lends a sense of reality to an otherwise fantastical story that features everything from a dungeon crawl to Mizu almost single-handedly destroying what amounts to a small army of dudes with Wolverine claws. All of which the animation pulls off with so much style, pizzazz, and fun. This is a dark story, and Mizu is a bleak character with a sort of grimness to her, especially in the quieter and more reflective moments. But the fast-paced, exciting fight scenes are where Mizu really comes alive. She's in her element, and even seems to have some fun with it. But aside from the incredible combat, Blue Eye Samurai has a strong emotional core and features deeply thoughtful cultural elements that create a sense of realism in the setting that grounds the production in a time and place that feels almost like a character itself. The creators and animators meticulously researched the time period, and the final result gives the feeling that no detail was too small and nothing is overlooked. For example, the character models were apparently designed to resemble Bunraku puppets.
The characters themselves, I've really designed them after Bunraku puppets. And Bunraku puppets is a traditional Japanese puppet performance that dates back to 200 years. And they would dramatize a lot of stories that are very adult-based. I remember watching these when I was young, and they were so haunting.
And there is one episode that actually juxtaposes some of Mizu's backstory with a performance of a similar story being told with the puppets, to beautiful effect. Even things like how people would have moved at this time in Japan were given careful consideration.
How Japanese people moved is a very specific way of moving. So I performed out all the movements that were culturally accurate to my storyboard team, and then I flew to France with a suitcase of kimonos, put everything on, and showed them what a walk is like for a Japanese woman in a kimono, how to sit, how to get up from a stance.
The backgrounds and environments feel almost painterly in their style. There are so many shots that could be a painting. The visuals are sumptuous in their textures, colors, and sense of place. Enchanting is probably the word I'd use to describe a lot of these visuals. It really does feel like some kind of magic when you take it all in. Part of why Blue Eye Samurai looks so good is the production team decided that they wanted to keep the final product faithful to the concept art. And I really appreciate that because there are so many movies and shows out there where you look at the concept art and you look at the finished product and you wonder what happened. But not in this case. Overall, the viewing experience of Blue Eye Samurai is wonderful, but it isn't without flaws. The story tries to do a lot at once and has so many influences it incorporates, which can result in some unevenness here and there. While the action scenes themselves are a joy to watch, there are some elements within the larger action set pieces that feel so contrived they're almost silly, and it does strain against the old suspension of disbelief, although that doesn't really matter because I literally don't care if it's believable or not when I'm having this much fun. But there were just some things that felt cartoony, which stand in sharp relief to the parts that feel like a live-action drama. For example, this season's bad guy, Abijah Fowler, is an evil Irish traitor hiding out in Japan, one of Mizu's possible fathers. The choice to make him Irish rather than British is interesting since he basically represents the personification of colonialism and Western influence. He's an incredibly flat villain who is bad for the sake of being bad, but Kenneth Branagh is clearly having the time of his life in the role, and he is a delight to watch. So to an extent, he doesn't really need to be any more complex than he is.
Still alive? Why?
But he does feel like a cartoon character. While the first 5 episodes are fantastic, the last 3 episodes feel a bit more inconsistent. And the final episode, The Great Fire of 1657, is where the problems are most noticeable, with an enormous and coordinated assault on the shogunate that's been foreshadowed and built up throughout the series. Mizu is there at Edo Castle, not because she plans to save the shogunate or protect anyone, but because Fowler is leading the assault and she is following him. The assault itself feels almost anticlimactic in terms of how little resistance there actually is to the attack. Also, Mizu inadvertently causes the fire of 1657, which burned down like 60 to 70% of what is now Tokyo and killed like 100,000 people. That's a huge body count as collateral for a revenge quest. And we don't really have time to reckon with it, although she does get called out for it explicitly.
Biggest city in the world is burning to the ground as a blood sacrifice to your revenge.
So that's kind of wild. When the fire starts, there's a nice little visual reference to a kimono catching fire, which I think is intentional since in real life, allegedly the fire started when a priest attempted to dispose of a cursed kimono. But even with some of the issues with the storytelling, Mizu and the other characters we get to know over the course of the series are incredibly compelling, and I can't wait to find out what happens in season 2, assuming Netflix doesn't ruin my life and cancel it.
An artist gives all they have to the art, the whole. Your strengths and deficiencies, your loves and shames.
The series does also do something interesting with its conception of art, referring to both sex and death as being arts that can be mastered.
There is an art to sex, yes. Done correctly, it may be a form of worship.
You think revenge is an art?
Swords, pots, noodles, death. It is all the same to an artist.
One of the few people in Mizu's life that we see her openly show affection for from the start is Master Eiji, who she calls Swordfather.
Please protect Swordfather from time and harm.
He's a kindly, blind sword maker who takes Mizu in and raises her while teaching her the art of sword making, while she goes about teaching herself a different sort of art. I think it's fascinating that we learn that Fowler has mastered various arts during his time in imprisonment.
You've mastered the brush.
But lacks any appreciation for them.
I hate painting, and woodblock, and ceramic, and calligraphy, and every other useless art. If I have time to paint, something is wrong.
Like, bro, I wish I had limitless time to paint. Shut up. The exploration of the theme of what it means to be an artist is also connected to the idea of greatness and what it is to be great, which the series discusses on several occasions, including the various paths to greatness.
There are 4 paths through the world: the way of the farmer, the artisan, the merchant, and the warrior. Each of these can lead to greatness. I've actually seen what greatness looks like. And I know I can't touch greatness any more than I can swallow the sun, but I can help.
Mizu wants to be the greatest swordsman of all time.
Why does a swordmaker's apprentice practice swordplay?
Because I must become a great swordsman. I must become the greatest swordsman alive.
Is that all?
But her reason for that desire is revenge.
At the time I was born, there were 4 white men in all of Japan. I do not know their names. I do know their fate. They will all die by my hand. I have vowed this.
Swordfather, despite making weapons, frowns upon senseless violence, and he tries more than once to steer Mizu away from the path of revenge.
I have no steel for you.
The relationship between Mizu and Swordfather is kind of a mirror to Akemi's relationship with Seki. He also lets Mizu make her own choices and mistakes, and accepts her readily despite what she sees as irredeemable things about herself.
When I told you my shame, you did not disown me, even though I am hideous to men's eyes.
I have no eyes, so I can accept you.
I love it a lot. The wholesome elderly mentor trope is another one I'm pretty much always going to be a sucker for, and that is definitely the case here. Also, this little scene between them where he asks if she has somewhere to go, and she lies and says she does, but then tries to hide in his hut since he can't see her, and he knows she's there and lets her stay.
Cold morning. It would be nice if someone made tea.
It's just really sweet, and it makes some of the darkness in the story more bearable, knowing Mizu has someone who loves her.
Would be nice if someone got my tongs. The longer ones.
I also love this part where he can recognize her by just the sound of her sword.
Mizu.
It's all so good. I also think it's really interesting that at first it seems like Mizu was steadfast on the path to revenge since childhood, but there was a brief time she thought she could be something different. The idea that she tried to live a normal life but couldn't adds even more dimension to her commitment to her quest now. Although Mizu isn't a hero, we do see her do little things that show a better nature than she seems to realize, and it gives us some hope that maybe she can let go of that anger someday and become more than just satisfied. The beauty and attention to detail in this series make it an absolute pleasure to watch, and there's something cathartic in a tale of unabating rage and revenge like this, although the ending does deny us the realization of that catharsis. Sure, Blue Eye Samurai isn't that realistic, but realism isn't the main reason I watch stories, especially stories like these. Mizu doesn't have to be realistic to feel real and consequential. Her determination and her anger are enough to carry her. For now. But that's just my opinion. Have you seen Blue Eye Samurai? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos. See you next time. Wiedersehen.